Brian Thompson, the CEO of UnitedHealthcare, was shot and killed in the Altoona Police Department, arrested Luigi Mangione.
And insult the intelligence of the American people and the lived experience.
Good evening and welcome to our Court TV, Scripps News, and WMAR2 News viewers. I'm Vinnie Politan. In the next hour, we are going to go in depth into the biggest investigation in our country right now, which is the shooting death, the murder, the assassination of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson and the man accused of doing it, 26-year-old Luigi Mangione. We have teams spread across the country tonight. In Thompson, Maryland, Scripps News Baltimore reporter Elizabeth Worthington. In New York, Scripps News national correspondent Alex Miller. In Pennsylvania, Scripps News legal affairs correspondent Ava Joy Burnett. Here in studio, Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas, and in Washington, D.C., national investigative reporter with Scripps News, Patrick Terpstra is with us. We begin with Scripps News Baltimore reporter Elizabeth Worthington. Good evening, Elizabeth.
Yeah, it is difficult to overstate just how well-respected and well-connected the family is around here. The Mangione name is attached to industries ranging the gamut from media to politics to healthcare and real estate. They have donated hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years. They own a country club, a golf resort, a radio station, and even nursing homes. And they are well known for their philanthropy, donating hundreds of thousands of dollars to schools, churches, and hospitals. The Mangione family's Baltimore area roots begin in the city's Little Italy neighborhood in 1925, and humble beginnings they were. Nicholas Mangione Sr. was only 11 when his father, an Italian immigrant who couldn't read or write, passed away. Nick, the family patriarch, grew up poor but was determined to make his own way in the world. A World War II Navy vet and later self-made millionaire, he told the Baltimore Sun in a 1995 profile that he saw himself as a true American success story. He and his wife Mary raised 10 children together, and by the time he passed away in 2008, there were 37 grandchildren. One of those grandchildren is Luigi.
Luigi Nicholas Mangione. Luigi.
The young Mangione attended Gilman School, an all-boys private prep school in Baltimore, where he graduated in 2016 as the valedictorian.
Parents here today. First off, sending us to Gilman was far from a small financial investment. I'd like to personally thank each of you for sending your sons here.
Maryland attorney Thomas Moronic Jr., who has known the Mangione family for 20 years, sheds light on the prestige granted to a Gilman grad.
So if you went to a place like Loyola or Gilman, there's a certain esteem, respect that's built in for going there. So to be the valedictorian there is really an accomplishment.
From Gilman, he went to the Ivy League, the University of Pennsylvania, where he earned 2 computer science degrees. After graduating, he worked in tech for a video game company and a car buying site. And sometime before January of 2022, he moved to Hawaii. Photos from his social media show him in Hawaii looking fit and happy. The spokesperson for the owner of the house Mangione was staying at told the Associated Press that he was, quote, widely considered to be a great guy. There were no complaints. There was no sign that might point to these alleged crimes they're saying he committed. One of the unsolved mysteries of that period in his life concerns Mangione's back. His social media shows a photo of what appears to be a spine stabilization surgery that Mangione underwent on the mainland for back pain. After he returned to Hawaii, friends and family stopped hearing from him.
I think that the loss of contact suggests sort of a rogue situation where this is somebody from a privileged background who went rogue.
What allegedly happened next in the life of Luigi Mangione shocked the nation. At 6:45 the morning of December 4th, police say Mangione walked up behind UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson and shot him dead with a silenced 9mm pistol. Then calmly got on an e-bike, rode to a bus station many miles away, and headed to Pennsylvania.
We're following 2 major breaking news stories this hour concerning the manhunt for the gunman behind the murder of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson.
The manhunt dominated headlines for days, accompanied by a disturbing outpouring of support for the murder in comment sections and across social media, until finally, in a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania, a break.
He matches the description of the identification we've been looking for He's also in possession of several items that we believe will connect him to this incident.
Shell cases found at the scene reportedly were marked with the words deny, defend, and depose, echoing criticisms of health insurance practices, pointing to a possible motive. A manifesto police say Mangione wrote, published by investigative reporter Ken Klippenstein on Substack, read in part, quote, "I do apologize for any strife or traumas, but it had to be done. Frankly, these parasites simply had it coming." That anger can be seen again as deputies walked him into a hearing.
And completely out of touch and insult the intelligence of the American people and lived experience.
What lived experience Mangione was referring to is unclear. His own life as the highly successful scion of one of Baltimore's most prominent families had been charmed, at least until Hawaii.
When I heard it was a Mangione, I was just really surprised because that's just the last family you would ever associate with something like this.
So since the arrest, the Mangione family has stayed mostly silent. All we've heard from them actually came in the form of a statement from Luigi's cousin, who is a state delegate, Nino Mangione. And he said on behalf of the family, they are devastated and shocked by the news, and they don't know anything beyond what's being reported in the media. He also said they're praying for the victim's family, in this case, Brian Thompson, of course, and they asked the public to pray for everybody involved.
Yeah, Elizabeth Worthington, I look at this case, and so many parts of it are surprising, but the family and the background of this defendant is really the first thing that sort of floors you. Elizabeth Worthington in Baltimore tonight, in Towson, thank you so much. Also joining us from outside Manhattan Criminal Court, Scripps News national correspondent Alex Miller. Going to take a look at some of the evidence against this accused killer.
Well, I'm standing outside of the courthouse if this goes to trial that this case will likely be tried in. But as you said, the evidence against Luigi Mangione continues to mount, particularly with ghost guns. We heard the Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg talking about this in his press conference on Tuesday, saying that they are, of course, just as deadly, but also as admissible and traceable as a gun would be from a shop. It took 5 days, but when officers arrested 26-year-old Luigi Mangione on forgery and weapons charges in connection with the murder of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson, the evidence was seemingly laid out for them on a silver platter.
He's also in possession of several items that we believe will connect him to this incident.
Altoona police found Mangione with similar clothing, a face mask, and the ID used at the hostel prior to the shooting. They also recovered a firearm and a suppressor, both believed to have been used in the murder.
What about the things that were found on his person while he was, at the McDonald's? Damning. And the Kind bar and the coffee cups, I mean, his fingerprints are all over this scene, seemingly.
Damning.
Mangione's fingerprints were on multiple items found at or near the Hilton where Thompson was killed, including on a cell phone. Police say the ghost gun they recovered from him matches shell casings also found at the scene. Criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Jeremy Saland says it's an easy indictment for the Manhattan district attorney, but a less easy trial. In this case, it might not be about whether or not Mangione physically pulled the trigger. That much could be clear.
There is an action and there's a mental state. So all of that either goes to your case as the defense to challenge the mental piece of this.
Police also recovered a mini manifesto, reportedly directly connecting Mangione to the crime and railing against America's healthcare system. Saland says that could hurt an insanity defense.
You're premeditating this and planning it out step by step, and you're being articulate and reasoned as to why, even if it sounds weird or wrong or off base, for lack of a better term, it hurts that psychiatric defense. That said, you could still have mental health infirmities and defects, as we call it in the law, and pre-plan something, and premeditate something.
Completely out of touch and insult the intelligence.
But the insanity defense is one Saland says needs to be explored regardless. He explained that outburst adds to the narrative that there is something mentally wrong with Mangione. He is an Ivy League grad and a high school valedictorian with a seemingly stellar reputation, yet he hadn't been in contact with family and friends for a significant amount of time. In fact, his mother called police just over 2 weeks before the shooting.
What value, if any, does it hold that his mom reported him missing in San Francisco before this?
It helps maybe understand if she's reporting that he's been unstable and he's not been unresponsive, that helps explain who he is. That, yes, he may have had the intent in terms of the eyes of the law, but it wasn't born from this malicious ugliness.
It's those little pieces that could put together a story for Mangione's team as they try to counter the growing mountain of evidence tying him to this murder. And Vinny, we learned more about those conversations with Mangione's mother from that news conference that happened on Tuesday, specifically that she spoke with the FBI 2 days before her son was apprehended, saying that this is something she could see him doing. Now, she didn't say he looked like the person in the photo, but just that she simply could see him doing something like this. Obviously, very important information as they tried to find him. But before they were able to pass that information along to detectives, Mangione was apprehended at that McDonald's.
Yeah, I'm shocked that his mother could not identify her son from his photo. That's a little puzzling. Alex Miller in Manhattan. I know we're going to talk again. Joining me right now, criminologist, investigative profiler Dr. Casey Jordan, and former NYPD officer, retired Nassau County Lieutenant and Commanding Officer Mike Gould. Great to have you both here. Dr. Casey Jordan, let's talk about this defendant. He's found with the murder weapon. He's found with a manifesto as well. Those are two huge things. What do they tell you about Luigi Mangione?
Well, the manifesto is about the best evidence we have right now to establish. He rails against the healthcare system, which is completely, in his disturbed mind, would think it was necessary to shoot the CEO. If he had taken out a number of people, we have a category of oriented. And even though he didn't do that, you know, I think he had a mention in his spiral about he considered a bomb but did not want to hurt innocent people. But he is considered a killer. And this is a grudge collector who is on a mission to take out or eradicate something that they perceive to be an enemy. Examples of this. And you know, he had done and Kaczynski's manifesto. And of course, Ted Kaczynski was a mission-oriented killer. He was anti-tech, very much like our suspect here. Joseph Stack against the you know, an incel. You get these people who are on a mission because they be made aware of some terrible malady, some scourge on. So that explains his psychology. The bigger question is, will mental health defense, was this born of some undiagnosed schizophrenia? New York uses guilty but mentally ill, and it uses the substantial capacity test. So it would not surprise me at all if that is where this case is going.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think that's where they're going to go. I think there's also some discussion between first and second degree. But Mike Gould, we talk about a mountain of evidence. I'm not seeing a mountain of evidence. I'm seeing a mountain range of evidence in this case. I've never seen anything quite like it. Every type of evidence you would want, it seems that they have here.
Yeah, definitely, Vinny. Like I said, this is an early Christmas present for the prosecutor, if in fact they use it properly. The evidence is abundant. The manifesto is a confession from a law enforcement perspective, and the weapon was in his possession. So it should be a slam dunk case. Yeah, he's a modern day Robin Hood. There's, you know, this is rich in our history. Anti-establishment vigilantes, as the doctor said, Ted Kaczynski. These people are put on pedestals. Charles Manson had a following. He had a heroic following. So, but I don't think the mental defect defense is going to work. The son of Sam couldn't do that. He killed 6 people, and he used to thought his dog was, or the next door neighbor's dog was telling him to do it, and that didn't work. So that's a tough one, the mental defect defense.
Sounds to me like, Mike Gould, do you think New Yorkers are a little skeptical at times, and especially when they're sitting in the jury? Dr. Casey Jordan, we have like 15 seconds here, 20 seconds. Do you think he knew he was making all these mistakes along the way, or did he think he was outsmarting everyone?
No. Yes, laid murder plan will have 10 to 20 mistakes. And this is a highly, highly intelligent individual, clearly. You know, I masters in computer science, but the adrenaline that pumps through your body when you pull the trigger on somebody, and the rush of adrenaline actually will make you do things like drop your water bottle, drop your phone, somehow think that keeping the gun is a good idea. That to me is just indicative of he through his body and wanted to keep that gun close to him in case he needed it.
Big thank you tonight to Dr. Casey Jordan and Mike Gould. Always appreciate your expertise. Up next, we look into the life of the victim, Brian Thompson.
Did you know Scripps News is streaming for free on all your favorite streaming services?
That is something that is very important.
Search for Scripps News on your smart TV to find our channel.
This is amazing stuff here.
Once you get the app, get full free access to breaking news.
All that excitement culminates today.
Live events.
And you can really kind of feel the energy.
And the award-winning journalism you expect from Scripps News.
Oh yeah, there it is.
Start streaming Scripps News today.
In the nearly 2 weeks since Mr. Thompson's killing, we have seen a shocking and appalling celebration of cold-blooded murder. Social media has erupted with praise for this cowardly attack. People ghoulishly plastered posters threatening the other CEOs, with an X over Mr. Thompson's picture. These are the threats of a lawless, violent mob who would trade in their own vigilantism for the rule of law that protects us all. Let me say this plainly. There is no heroism in what Mangione did. This was a senseless act of violence. It was a cold and calculated crime that stole a life and put New Yorkers at risk.
That's the NYPD Commissioner, Jessica Tisch, angry with the reaction that she has seen on social media and seen in the city of New York to all of this, hailing the defendant, the suspect, the accused killer, and saying nothing or saying negative things about the victim in the case. So I want to spend some time to talk about the victim in this case. Let's bring in national investigative reporter with Scripps News, Patrick Terpstra is with us. Patrick, you know, not hearing a lot about the victim.
No, and Brian Thompson was someone who was well loved. He leaves behind a wife, 2 sons, and many who knew him long before his final steps on a New York City sidewalk. Life ended for Brian Thompson as he headed to an investor meeting in New York. But life began for this UnitedHealthcare CEO in a place about as different as you can get from Midtown Manhattan. 1,100 miles away in the smallest of small towns, Jewell, Iowa, population 1,183, where Thompson grew up in a farming community. He had an older brother. They'd go fishing before school or church. Rick Young has known the Thompson family for years.
The Thompson family is stellar. Can't say enough about them.
Yearbook photos Scripps News obtained in Iowa show Thompson on the golf team and basketball team. In 1992, he was crowned Homecoming King. He was all-state trombonist in band and graduated high school as valedictorian.
You know, some people are street smart, some people are intellectually smart, some people are book smart. Brian had the gift of being all of those different things, but that didn't mean he walked around with his head up in the clouds.
In April 2021, the kid from Jewell, Iowa, had become CEO of UnitedHealthcare, a company with 140,000 employees worldwide. Thompson became rich, earning $10 million last year, according to company financial records. With Thompson at the top of UnitedHealthcare, the company's rate of denials became a focus of investigators in the U.S. Senate, who found United turning down more and more claims from some of its sickest patients. The Senate report said UnitedHealthcare's denial for post-acute care surged from almost 11% in 2020 to nearly 23% in 2022. UnitedHealthcare defends its denial rate, saying it approves and pays about 90% of medical claims. Other problems also clouded Thompson's short tenure as CEO. Earlier this year, a class action lawsuit accused Thompson and 2 other healthcare executives of insider trading, saying Thompson sold over $15 million of his personally held United Health shares after learning the Justice Department had opened an antitrust investigation, news that wasn't yet public. Plaintiffs included California public employee retirees and the City of Hollywood, Florida Firefighters Pension Fund, alleging they bought stock at artificially inflated prices, according to court documents. Response to Thompson's death has included dark reactions online, some even celebrating his murder and placing blame on insurance practices. Those who track the industry say Thompson was actually working to reform healthcare, recording this promotional video.
Well, no, healthcare costs too much, and we're doing our best to fix it, but there's a long ways to go.
He is the CEO of that organization, but he tries actually to change it. And so you would expect the first reaction is like, this is just terrible. And then there is those reactions, you know, people are frustrated with the industry.
A former colleague of Thompson's at UnitedHealthcare, who asked not to be identified, given the hostility against insurers, tells us it's ironic Thompson was the one targeted, someone he says was not motivated by money. A man not from privilege, but from a working-class family rooted in the heartland.
you have to shake your head. So why Brian?
A life from the high school band room to the corporate boardroom, suddenly cut short at age 50. And Brian Thompson was laid to rest in a private ceremony in Maple Grove, Minnesota. That is a suburb of Minneapolis where he had been living, raising those two boys. Vinny?
Yeah, the contrast, there's some similarities, obviously, between the defendant and the victim in this case, but where they came from couldn't be more different. Patrick Terpstra, thank you so much. Joining us now, clinical and forensic neuropsychologist and author of the book, The New Rules of Attachment, Dr. Judy Ho, joins our conversation. Let's talk about this reaction. And it seems like it's young people. I think one of the papers in New York has a poll out that 40% of young voters believe this was okay.
Yeah, Vinny, it's really hard to believe when you look at social media and you look at the kind of extreme reactions that, like you said, a big proportion of young people are having to this murder, that people could be so callous, even knowing that Thompson was, I mean, he is the head of the company, but there are so many other decision makers. Also, it's a human life. He left behind a family. And if you look at the kind of social media vitriol against him, essentially blaming him for the entire industry's failures, people are telling personal stories about their family members being denied and maybe dead family members, maybe they wouldn't be dead if this hadn't happened, and essentially laying all the blame on Thompson and saying that this killing was justified because of the broken industry.
Let me ask you, Dr. Judy Ho, are you concerned that there might be someone out there who might be suffering from some level of mental illness that will then pick up the torch and say this was justified? Let me be the next Luigi Mangione?
So I am very concerned about that, Vinny. We see this in the wake of any kind of high-profile murder, mass shootings, that oftentimes there are copycat victims, copycat perpetrators, and they're taking notes as they're hearing about the coverage, thinking, well, how can I make this better the next time? How can I solve this problem so maybe I won't be caught? Or how can I get to more people and have more justice? So I am really concerned, and I think that, again, as a society, Vinny, we're still very much independent. We feel bad when we encroach on other people's privacy. So sometimes when we see things that are concerning, we don't go to law enforcement right away just to say, hey, there's a suspicious person. Can you look into them? I think that in this time, we just have to do our duty as citizens, because the worst thing that you do is you report somebody, they're completely innocent, nothing happens. But I think that sometimes hindsight is 2020, and we realize that maybe we could have helped prevent another tragedy from happening.
Dr. Judy Ho, we have about 15 seconds here. How difficult is this going to be for his family, knowing that their father, their husband, has been the focal point of all this hate online?
I think that they're probably besides themselves. And right now they're going to have to stay together with loved ones, try to just stay connected as much as possible and process this together. It's going to be a long road, Vinny.
All right. Dr. Judy Ho, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Great to see you. Up next, Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas walks us through the suspect's movements in New York City before and after the deadly attack.
On November 24th, we allege that the defendant arrived in New York City to murder Brian Thompson. After the defendant arrived in New York City on a bus at Port Authority, he checked into the hostel on the Upper West Side using the name Mark Rosario with a fake New Jersey ID. On the morning of December 4th, the defendant left the hostel, just after 5:30 a.m. and traveled to Midtown. For nearly an hour, we allege the defendant waited in the area near the Hilton Hotel, waiting for Mr. Thompson to appear.
So much of this case and this investigation has been built on retracing the steps of the accused killer, Luigi Mangione, through New York, and investigators doing an amazing job tracking down surveillance video, fingerprints, and other things in order to retrace his steps. And joining us now here in studio, Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas, who's going to take a look at all of that and retrace those steps for us tonight. Cody?
Good evening, Benny. The timeline of this shooting begins as far back as this summer. Luigi Mangione was an active user of social media, but at some point, he stopped posting. Now, this caught the attention of users who presumably knew Mangione and began tagging him in posts on X, saying they had not heard from him and his family was looking for him. Mangione's mother reported him missing in San Francisco in mid-November, which brings us close to the date law enforcement believe Mangione's plan began to unfold. On Sunday, November 24th, at 10:11 p.m., police say shooting suspect Luigi Mangione arrives in New York at the Port Authority bus terminal in Midtown Manhattan on a Greyhound bus that originated in Atlanta. It's unclear when or where he boarded the bus. He then takes a cab to the area of the New York Hilton Midtown Hotel, where he stays for about half an hour. Then, at around 11 p.m., police say the suspect takes another cab to the Upper West Side, where he checks into the HI New York City hostel. Surveillance cameras captured the suspect's face after he pulled down his mask to smile at the person working the desk. To check in, the suspect allegedly uses this fraudulent New Jersey ID obtained by NBC News. On Friday, November 29th, authorities say Mangione was automatically checked out of the hostel because he did not appear at the desk at a required time. Now, police believe he checked back into the hostel the same day and did not stay anywhere else. Now, fast forward to Wednesday, December 4th. The suspect is believed to have left his hostel at around 5:30 a.m. and headed down to Midtown, where the UnitedHealthcare CEO was scheduled to appear at an investors conference. Court TV legal correspondent Kelly Craft takes us through the suspect's movements through New York City on that day.
Police say the suspect came here to this Starbucks. Surveillance video obtained by the Washington Post shows the suspect buying bottled water and 2 power bars. This was before the shooting. We are outside the New York Hilton in Midtown. Police say that Brian Thompson was coming into this hotel for a conference, an investor conference, but 5 minutes prior, police are saying that the suspect, the man who gunned him down, was standing right out here on this very sidewalk. He was waiting for his target, and then he spotted him. He began to follow him. He got behind him, got about 20 feet from him, and then opened fire, shooting him in the back. Then he got closer and shot him in the calf. Police say after the shooting, the suspect fled on foot, coming through this alleyway between 54th and 55th, and then turning right onto 6th Avenue. Now, police say the suspect rode away. It's not clear if he picked up the bike from a docking station like this one, or if he had the bike positioned somewhere else ready to go. What we do know is that when he got on, he fled north on 6th Avenue and went into Central Park. Police say the suspect eventually rode his bike through Central Park, exiting here on the west side of the park at 77th Street. The suspect is then seen here at 86th and Columbus. He gets into a cab, and then he heads to the bus station. And that bus station he headed to, the George Washington Bridge bus terminal, surveillance cameras caught him entering the terminal, but not leaving, at least on foot.
And Vinny, the story does not end there. On December 7th, police released more images of the suspect while scuba divers searched Central Park and investigators followed up on leads, including the discovery of the words delay, deny, and depose written in marker on ammunition found at the scene. On December 9th, around 9:14 in the morning, Altoona, Pennsylvania police respond to a McDonald's for, quote, reports of a male matching the description of the UnitedHealthcare CEO murder suspect. An officer asked the suspect to lower his mask and then asked him whether he had been to New York City recently. Police said the suspect, now identified as Mangione, became quiet and started to shake. He was taken in for questioning, as seen in this video obtained by Fox News. Then at around 1:45 p.m., New York police officials announced Mangione had been arrested in Pennsylvania on firearms charges.
Members of the Altoona Police Department arrested Luigi Mangione, a 26-year-old male, on firearms charges. At this time, he is believed to be our person of interest in the brazen targeted murder of Brian Thompson, CEO of UnitedHealthcare, last Wednesday in Midtown Manhattan.
Later that night, online court records in New York showed a warrant issued accusing Mangione of second-degree murder in Thompson's death. And Vinny, Mangione remains in custody in Pennsylvania, pending his extradition to New York.
All right, Cody, thanks so much for retracing the steps. I mean, that's how the case is built here. You're able to see where he entered New York, every place he stayed, so much video. Let's bring in retired police commander and host of the podcast Profiling Evil and the author of the book Deceived, Mike King, is with us. Mike, great to see you. Looking at who this guy is, right? No criminal record. He's never done this before, but he's extremely bright. All the mistakes that were made, all of the evidence that was found, why is that? Is it great police work? Is it mistakes made by someone who's never done this before? Or is it just par for the course in the world we live in now?
You know, Vinny, I think it's really kind of par for the course of criminal behavior, especially when you're starting out as a criminal. You got to think about all the fantasy that this guy was going through as he went through the preparatory stages, which gives him this appearance of being very organized. But once the shooting started and once that emotion has just hit this climactic point, he starts to lose organization, starts to become a little disorganized, drops his phone. We see other mistakes starting to happen along the way. And so what we have to do is, number one, be thankful that this isn't a career criminal who's perfected his trade over the course of many, many crimes. And the fact that the CCTV camera system in the city, the fact that they have a digital footprint that I'm sure they're putting together, and the fact that this guy probably, Vinny, practiced over those 10 days that he was there and made sure that he was going to have everything lined up. And imagine how pumped up he was getting as he practiced day after day.
We have about 30 seconds here, Mike. What are your thoughts about the fact that he shows up just 5 minutes before Brian Thompson crosses the street to try to enter the Hilton Hotel, and it's an hour and 15 minutes before he's supposed to begin his program that night? That fact, still, I don't understand that.
You know, there's a couple of things that I found that I haven't been able to validate, but number one is that the conference that they were in had an early morning breakfast from what I've been able to determine. It's possible that he's watched him day after day, and those 2 or 3 days before the conference, go over and knew that he had a window between 6:30 in the morning or maybe 7:30 or 8 o'clock, and that he probably planned on being more patient than he had to be in this particular case. So I think it's really going to boil down to the intel that he gathered before he went in and committed the homicide, if in fact this is the guy that committed the murder.
Absolutely. Mike King, thanks so much. Coming up next, what is next for the accused killer, Luigi Mangione?
We have been preparing on parallel paths, and before the hearing, we'll send to the governor of the state of New York the paperwork that would be necessary if he does not waive during that hearing.
Tonight, on Closing Arguments, he was once considered the king of hip-hop. Now he faces federal sex trafficking charges. We're diving deeper into the case against Sean P. Diddy Puffy Combs.
closing arguments. Coming up next, only on Court TV.
People wanted answers, and people started locking their doors.
You know what it means. You know what you did, right?
Please hear me out. Please.
And I said, OJ, everybody thinks you're guilty.
Luigi Mangione, the defendant, is charged with 1 count of murder in the first degree and 2 counts of murder in the second degree, including 1 count of murder in the second degree as an act of terrorism. For the brazen, targeted, and premeditated shooting of Brian Thompson, who, as you know, was the CEO of UnitedHealthcare.
That's the New York DA, Alvin Bragg, who's leading the prosecution of Luigi Mangione in New York. But we know there are charges also in Pennsylvania where he was arrested. So with us in Pennsylvania, from where Luigi Mangione will appear in court, Scripps News legal affairs correspondent Ava Joy Burnett. And back with us from outside the Manhattan Criminal Court, Scripps News national correspondent Alex Miller. Let's go first to you, Ava. Joy, let me ask you. Charges in two jurisdictions. Sometimes the jurisdictions fight with each other. What's the order here? Who's going to go first? Who's going to triumph first?
Well, you are right about that, Vinny. There are charges against Luigi Mangione in two separate states, charges here in Pennsylvania and also in the state of New York. But it is very likely that the state of New York will be able to take him to trial first. And here's why. We want to show you the charges against him here in Pennsylvania. They're very simple. The most serious charges here are a weapons charge, a firearms charge, and also forgery. But then when you look at the charges in the state of New York, it is very apparent that they are much more serious. We're talking about a first-degree murder charge. There is a terrorism attachment to that first-degree murder charge. There are also two second-degree murder charges, and one of those charges has an act of terrorism attached to it as well. And it's that buzzword, terrorism, that has gotten the attention of so many legal experts, and it appears as if the district attorney, Alvin Bragg, was very aware of that. So here's the district attorney yesterday defending his decision to have these very harsh charges against Mangione.
I think it does help to take a step back, and think about the proof in the case, some of the writings. I'm not going to get into too much of that, but and the actual reaction. In the middle of Midtown, the beginning of a busy day, tourists, commuters, business people, the intent was to sow terror.
And two of those charges in the state of New York are so severe. If Mangione is found guilty, he could spend life behind bars without the possibility of parole, Vinny.
Parole is a real issue here. He's only 26. So, you get a 25 to life, something like that. You get out as an adult, but you have an opportunity, or at least a chance. So as we sit here tonight, what happens next now?
So the big thing right now, Vinny, is a major hearing that will be happening in this building right behind me. That is why we are in Hollidaysburg, Pennsylvania. There will be an extradition hearing tomorrow morning, bright and early. And a source who's familiar with the thinking of the legal experts who are helping Mangione, they have told us that he now plans to waive extradition. Remember that this is something that he was fighting last week. Now we're being told that he plans to waive extradition. So what this means is he could be back in the state of New York within a matter of hours after tomorrow's hearing, or it could possibly take a few days. But we were able to speak with an attorney who gave us an idea of what he could run into once he goes back to the state of New York. We know that he has a very high-profile attorney who's representing him. Her name is Karen Friedman Agnifilo. This is someone who has been in the news even before this case. And the attorney who we spoke with worked with Agnifilo when she worked in the DA's office in Manhattan. Here's what he told us about what their first interactions could look like once they meet for the first time.
She will speak to him about every conceivable issue that may affect the defense, and it'll be the first of many meetings. But it'll start with her simply, going and introducing herself and, and working on some sort of rapport together because, she's going to be the most important person in his life until this case is over.
And Mangione is expected to be here in person tomorrow. Security is expected to be very tight, Vinny.
All right, thanks so much. Have a joy. Great to see you. Let's go to New York now, where Mangione will be going. Alex Miller joins us there. So, Alex, where exactly do we expect him to be sent? Where do we expect him to stay while he's in New York?
Well, we expect officers to pick him up in the coming days, depending on what happens at those hearings tomorrow. And when he gets picked up, he's going to Rikers, most likely. Now, that is obviously one of the most notorious prisons. It is ugly. It is frightening. It is known to be very dirty. It's likely that the accommodations that he has right now in Pennsylvania will look really good once he ends up at Rikers. Now, for the time being, he will be there. He'll be there for the foreseeable future. And I spoke with a former Manhattan district attorney about this. He said that it is likely that that arraignment, Vinny, is going to happen very quickly once he ends up back in New York.
You know, I grew up in the New York metropolitan area, and you just say the word Rikers, everyone knows what you're talking about, and the images that come in your mind are scary. Let's talk about the trial. What are people saying about Mangione getting a fair trial, or the DA getting a fair trial with what we've seen on social media?
Yeah, it's kind of the reverse issue, wondering whether he's going to get an incredibly fair trial in this sense, because we have seen in the political sphere, or in the public sphere rather, so much support, so much sympathy for him. And so there is this concern that there are so many people who have been touched by the healthcare system in one way or another that might be sympathetic to him. And so this is something that the district attorney's office is obviously going to have to take very seriously when they are vetting these jurors. But then you always, of course, run the risk that someone thinks that they can be fair and unbiased when it comes to sitting on that jury, but then they end up feeling that sympathy for Mangione because of what we see going on in the healthcare system in America. And I talked to that former assistant district attorney about this, asking, you know, can they bring up the issues with the healthcare system as part of his defense, as part of a way to sway the jury, to gain that sympathy? Listen to what he said.
It does not come out. I would be objecting left and right. This is not someone who suffered from something that he wasn't serviced for, but given health care for. We can agree probably that the healthcare system is run amok, and it doesn't help the people who really need help. But this is not healthcare on trial.
And Vinny, obviously a lot needs to happen before that we even get to that point. Likely going to have a 7:30 hearing, which is essentially will look at his mental health, which we spoke about earlier, the insanity plea that we may or may not see, but obviously he needs to be evaluated first.
Yeah, and I think the question everyone's wondering, does he care about the rest of his life? Does he want to testify? Does he want to make a point at trial? Or does he want to, like many criminal defendants, do as little time as possible? Alex Miller in Manhattan tonight in the rain. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Folks, of course, Court TV, Scripps News, WMAR2 News will have continuing coverage of all the biggest developments in this case. I'm Vinny Politan. Thanks so much for watching.